Get 9.
Oh, Dave's right in front of me. Sorry. You're right in the center. I missed you. There you are.
All right, we're up and live and we're ready to roll.
Okay.
All right.
First item on the agenda, review of minutes of 2/12/21. Any comments? I didn't
I
know.
would move to approve the minutes.
And I'll second that, Dave.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
I'll do a quick roll call.
Yep.
Let's see, Corey Fellows.
Am I voting today?
Oh, right. I think you're not. I forgot.
I know we're
Sorry.
missing Alan, but not sure.
Yeah, let's see. So then, yes, I think if we're missing one, then yes, you'd be voting.
All right. Yes.
All right. Jean Marie.
I'm not a voting member.
You're not. I got to go back and look at the rules clearly. Dave Merrill.
Aye.
I can't remember out of Peter or Marvin who's the alternate, to be quite honest.
I think I'm a voting member, actually.
All right.
Yeah, I think we're both voting.
You're both okay.
Yeah.
Marvin.
Yes, approve.
Peter.
Approved.
And Rick.
Approved.
All right.
Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Next item, review comp plan revision. Wow.
All right. So just quick. So I think the first thing I think would be helpful for us to do, just a quick background. I know we've done this before, but for, as this is being recorded and sent out, just a quick background to where we are at today. This is a process that's been going on for a few years. Folks remember pretty extensive public process in 2017, 2018, a very significant rewrite of the first draft of the ordinance, and then some further consideration with some significant edits out of that first rewrite. So it brings us up to a version 2 or maybe even 3. After further discussion, the committee back in March of 2020 felt as though they felt the plan was in a place to make recommendations to council, which was a week before COVID hit. And so as things went silent for 6 to 8 months, it seemed appropriate to re-engage the public before moving forward. We did that in the fall, winter of 2020 through a series of public forums and a public workshop with council, received a host of comments coming out of that. And so for the last couple of months, we've been going through a series of amendments. I just sort of counted up all the pages and little PDFs that we had put together. It was up over 70 odd pages that we've touched of this document. Some of the more significant sort of elements that we've worked on the last couple of months are sort of the implementation table, if you will, at the end of the document, sort of enhancing the understanding and the nexus from the 06 plan to this plan, a number of changes regarding sort of pace of growth and then further explanation of the intent of growth areas and the various types of growth areas. The difference between a regional activity center and a village, for example. Some ongoing items that came really out of our discussion with council is there is a ongoing copy edit that's happening with the draft that you have has been sent to GPCOG, Greater Portland Council of Governments. They are doing a copy edit, really looking for those minor grammatical errors, and also really trying to help us have the document read with one voice. That's one of the things, that we've all sort of recognized, that there's been probably at this point at least 7 different authors between the 4, 5, 6 that our consultants brought on, and then Karen and I with the work of you all. So just trying to sort of smooth that out. And so that is an ongoing effort that GPCOG has already started, and we anticipate getting back by the end of this month. Or actually probably sooner than that. They said it would take about 3 weeks, and that was a week ago. So another 2 weeks, middle of the month. So that brings us to the revised plan that you all have received a copy of. And really what I would like to at least start with and then go wherever the committee wishes to, of course. I think Karen and I just want to check in, be sure we did the things you expected us to do. We went through a host of changes, sort of went through them page by page and agreed to them. And so we believe we've incorporated all those accordingly. And so I guess let's start there and see if there's anything that we may have missed along the way. And I see Alan is joining us. Great.
Jay, one sort of process situation. I went to the office and printed this. And when I printed it, it came out, sort of like didn't fill the whole page. Now, it may have been something with my printer or something, but it was very difficult to read because it's so small. And I don't know whether we just got to make sure when it goes up on the town's website for public consumption, it fills the full page instead of a half page. I don't know what you call it, landscape, I guess it's called. So,
Are you seeing it as a sort of a book? So you have 2 pages on each 8.5 by 11?
no, so here's page 42, for example.
Oh, okay.
And you see there's nothing up here and nothing down here, and there's the page,
Okay.
instead of filling the whole page. If you look at the version that's currently on the town website, that it looks fine. I mean, because it's not this version.
Yep.
But anyway, I don't know. I tried to print it in portrait mode, and it was a mess. So just something to kind of check watch out for.
Yep. Thank you.
Well, I'm impressed with the amount of work you put in, Jay and Karen. And I didn't find anything that jumped out at me. So I'm enthusiastic that we can push this forward, but we'll look at, I think I saw Don. Did you have a hand up there?
Yeah, I was just gonna, Dave, I didn't mean to jump ahead of the members, so I'll hold my comments until you hear from the committee members, but I had a format comment that I was going to mention in addition to what.
I'm having a little bit of trouble with Don's audio. I don't know if anyone else is.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah.
How about this? Can you hear me better?
Yes, that's
better.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Sorry about the connection. But I had a format comment that I was going to make in addition to Rick's comment. The other issue I had is that it's just sort of a process question. But I'd rather hear from the committee members first and then make my point. I don't really want to, dominate the narrative. Thanks.
Okay, Peter.
Yeah, first off, I want to congratulate Jay and everyone on the staff team for the work that went into this. Clearly, it's a great piece of effort. And I found a number of nits in terms of wording and things like that. But if CPCOG is looking at that, I'll withhold on that and wait till we get a final draft from them. The one sort of item that we might want to consider offering in the how to use section of the document is a guide to the relative or links or indications of the relative parts of the town website that are either referenced in the document or would form kind of part of the holistic use of the document. In this day and age, I think a lot of people seeing those links would be helpful for people. So I don't propose adding a section or anything, but maybe one of the pages you could add a reference to links that would be relevant for readers.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Peter, but I feel like that might be a outside the plan doc item, just because the website's likely to change where the comp plan, to change anything in the comp plan requires an adoption. But yeah, we can work on that sort of a post-production type thing. Yep. And
that makes sense to me, Jay. If you put it on the site, because we've talked about, for example, having an Excel version of the implementation table. But also if we wanted to link to the planning board or the zoning board of appeals or things like that, it might be handy to use that site as a good one-stop shop for people interested in the overall shape of the town.
Peter, I just want to make sure I understand. You're not just talking about linking to different pages in the document. You're saying
No.
you know, hey, if we have a reference to, you know, a study and it's on the website, there might be a guide to that. Is that what you're?
That's what I'm talking about, Karen.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I think one of the things that GP Cog also suggested is that we do have an introductory letter that might go a long way toward what you're talking about in terms of how to use the document, that type of thing.
Like I said, I was really impressed with the shape that this has taken, and just good work on all.
Alan,
Yes, good morning. Sorry I was late. I had some login problems. The couple of things. First of all, I do want to thank everybody for the work that they've done. I think this, I think what really got me as I went through every page of this thing was this is truly a comprehensive document. I mean, not just the fact that it's a plan, but there's just an amazing amount of information that's in here. And if anybody actually takes the time and reviews the whole thing, I think they're going to be pretty impressed. The only other comment that I had, because it did look like everything got incorporated, at least the stuff that that I went back through my notes on. But I know that there was comments about pictures. And the only picture that I saw that may not have been local that I thought might have even been intentional. So I just thought I'd ask the question. But on page 65, there is a picture that's trying to show a workspace where you have a storefront on the first floor with living space on the second and third floors. And clearly that was not anything that's around here that I could see, but I didn't know if that was intentional just so that it showed what you were referencing. And if that's the case, I'm fine with it, but it was just the only one I saw going through and looking at every one of them that looked to be something that might have been coming from down south.
Ellen, I thought we caught all of those, and no, I think we have some. We can replace those the photo. It does have a connection to the text, but I think we could do it with, a shot of Walgreens or something like that. So I thought we caught all of those, but thank you for that.
It's just, I mean, that was one of the things that I tried to look at as I went through this thing page by page by page, and that's the only one that stuck out to me.
Okay.
Everything else looked like if it wasn't, it sure could have been.
Okay. Yeah, we had a big pool of pictures, so that was probably my bad instructions to the designer. So I, no doubt that was, I didn't list that on the page for her to fix.
Yep. Nope, not a problem.
Yeah, and I'll just sort of echo Dave and Alan that I think it's great work. Not easy to sort of edit and certainly write by committee. And I think this comes as close as reasonably expected to having sort of one consistent voice and sort of pulling everything together. So, I think any group of people could find little things that they could continue to pick at. And I don't mean to trivialize any additional comments that others may have, but I think this is looking good.
Yeah, it's quite a piece.
Mhm.
Lot of work.
Yep.
My comments are that I congratulate the committee. It is an enormous amount of work. And as a late arrival, I understand that today's task, according to a brief conversation I had with Jay on a slightly different other matter last week, today's task is to see whether or not, Jay, did I get it right, that at least the work that I helped with toward the end about incorporating the changes was accomplished. And yes, it was. as far as I can see. And absolute congratulations to the committee. Enormous thanks to the staff, of course. It's a little bit beyond comprehension, all the work that's gone into it. And my 2 cents are, or is, my 2 cents are, I'd like to see it before GP Cog. I'd like to see it after GP Cog has made their final edits. And I don't mean to put the cart before the horse, but this is everything I came to say or have to say. I don't know what the status is as far as our vote is concerned about taking it out of committee, passing it along, but I would like to, this is my other one of the 2 cents, I would like to say, or at least suggest, that the committee reconvene after GP Cog has weighed in, and after we've had the chance to review that final document, or what I'll call the final document from committee, and then send it out of committee after we've had that chance to review it. A lot of words to say a simple thing. I hope that made sense, though. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and certainly I think we can talk a bit more about process once we sort of, and I think we've heard from most at this point, if we've touched on the edits. I know Don did want to say something before, so before I jump into the next thing.
Don.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Thanks for the chance to comment. And I second pretty much what everybody has said in terms of the quality of the work and the amount of effort and that sort of thing. You know, this is a vastly different product than the one we started with, and I expect there will be further revisions. But I still, there's a couple things in here that I wanted to call these out, because I don't want to get all the way to council and then all of a sudden you hear from me and it's a big surprise. But I think there are still some questions in terms of some of the claims that we're making, you know, with the plan in its current form. And they're primarily around, you know, the issue, for example, of how does it replace the 2006 plan? You know, and it says very clearly that this replaces the plan. And without us being clear about how we would reference the other things that were in the 2006 plan, I have a problem with that assertion. Number one. Number two, I'm not even sure it's correct. I would like us to really verify if it is going to replace the 2006 plan, then exactly how does it do that? There are still conflicting statements. It says it's visionary on the one hand and broader, and yet it also makes a claim that it's more tactical. It can't be both. Okay, it can't be both. So that is a major conflict. I don't want to derail the process, and I certainly want to stick to the timeline that we've laid out. But those are still just a couple of major questions that I have that are serious, content issues that I think need to be clearly resolved and confirmed by the committee before it goes to the council. And finally, I just agree with the comment that several have made that, we really need to see a version of this before I don't think it's ready for prime time to go directly to the council from GP Cox.
Marvin?
I was going to ask Don. Don, do you have any page numbers, anything absolutely concrete we can look at that address the important issues you just raised?
Yes, I do.
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, I do. Yeah, yes, I do. And if you bear with me 1 minute, I'll go to my notes.
Appreciate it.
Actually,
Bear with me 1 second. I mean, on page 9, we say the plan remains consistent with those from the 2006 plan, but in fact replaces the 2006 plan at the time of adoption. Is that a true statement? Is that actually legally correct? So that's one point. Another one, goes on to say the 2021 plan is aimed at being more tactical. And it goes beyond the work of the 2006 plan. How can it be more tactical, given the fundamental difference in size and detail? We have a 300 plus page product in the case of the 2006 plan, including implementation plan detail, and this is a 90-page one. So it's easily 1/3 smaller than the other plan. How can it possibly be more tactical? And when we have an implementation plan that's called Building Success, it's high level and doesn't have any detail in it. So that is a big question. And there are a lot of content issues. I thought we were going to take out the be bold stuff. We've got whole 2 pages on be bold. That's scattered throughout. There are other things in there that I still think we talked about as a council or talked about as a committee and agreed to remove those. Those are still in there. So that's my, and apologies for this seeming like it may come from out of the blue, but I, spent a good deal of time, reading through it and, really only got through the detailed review about 1/3 of the way through, but I've just noticed those are pretty big threshold issues yet in my mind.
Well, I think,
Thanks for that detail.
thanks, Don. I think sequentially, each successive plan replaces the one previous to it. But, Jay, I don't know if you.
Yeah, I guess, I would, just to answer that question, I know Jean Marie, but just to answer the question, this plan does that statement. So that piece on page 9 was one of the ones that we reviewed in the last couple months, and was that sentence is intentionally in there to exactly to try to clarify that point for any readers, that this plan does legally replace the prior plan. That's what that sentence was. It's saying what it intended to say, I suppose. So I hope that at least clarifies that a bit. I understand there still might be some questions about that, but just to answer that one, when the council adopts this, this will now be considered the comprehensive plan of the town of Scarborough.
Marie?
Yeah, with all due respect to my fellow counselor, Jay just addressed that each comprehensive plan, it basically, and Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, it stands on its own. Yes, to some degree, it builds on previous plans, but plans are put as a vision or a hope, a plan for how a town is going to develop over the next 10 years. It's not a retrospective on, how do we do, where'd it go, and those types of things. It's where we're heading in the future. It's a forward-looking document. And I do know that there were a couple of counselors who were having a little bit of heartburn over, we had X, Y, and Z. And the plan in 2006, which was 15 years ago, was a very prescriptive plan in that in 2006, we were coming off from a crazy real estate build out period in the economy, and Scarborough wasn't ready to deal with it. We didn't have the zoning. We didn't have, GMO really. We were all over the place. So the 2006 plan addressed that. I happen to think that this plan does a really good job of setting forth, and I will use the term visionary, a visionary statement on where does this town want to see itself in the next 10 years. And I think it does a really good job with that. I do know Mr. Hamill and I chatted briefly about, are we giving enough emphasis to the role of the beaches or beach communities in this plan? I don't know. That's a good question. I've gone through it a couple times, and I'm looking at it more from if I were a developer or in the business of, well, I am in the business of selling homes, and you know, owning business or whatever, what's Scarborough going to look like, that this plan does a good job of addressing that, and also addressing how we can hit that balance between our growth areas, which are very clearly delineated, and then those areas of town where I happen to live in, which are considered rural. So, you know, and please, I'm not saying I disagree with you, Mr. Hamill, but I think you're down in the weeds a bit too much. But then we know how that is with you and me. I'm the big picture person, and Dawn's more the detail person. Look, he's gonna.
So
Thank you.
So thank you. If I may, I just would like to, you know, confess that I agree. I am down in the weeds quite often. That is a fair statement. But to that point, what I'd say is that you know, a quick look at the implementation plan, I think it is executable. Okay, I do believe that, but I still think and I'll use one example. We don't make any reference to the beaches or working waterfront. Okay, we have one page on that. And Jay, you've shared the page with me. And previously there were, you know, over a dozen pages, probably more like 24 pages between implementation plan detail and things we're going to do for marine and beach issues. Right now, it kind of boils down to improving parking at Hurd Park, you know, and improving bathrooms. So if there's no reference to them, to the marine, you know, or not an adequate reference, when people start referring to the comprehensive plan to say, well, the comprehensive plan says we should do these things, I'm still concerned that there is a gap there as it relates to, you know, no references about the beaches and other marine areas, including working waterfront. You know, so that is it's a content issue that I think is a miss here, and you know, is a gap that needs to be filled. You know, when we went through it the first time, I kind of let it go, but when I read it all together, there's not really an adequate reference. And most of this is really focused on environment and land trust. And I feel if we do that to the exclusion of the other things, including the working waterfront, the co-op, access to the beaches for the public, then, you know, we got to build that in somehow.
And Don, if I recall, I think the email you had sent me referenced a discussion you had with the harbor committee, and so because I do recall, and not to say that isn't a spot that might be something we take a further look at, but I just for reference, I do recall that I think it was Larissa Crockett at the time was serving as the staff liaison to those committees and took the draft to the committees for review, and we didn't hear comments back. Again, not to say, you know, but there has been. So, yeah, that would be unfortunate if that was a miss that happened, and something to think about.
So just let me respond to that, Jay. So Larissa's not here now. You know, I've been working with coastal waters and shellfish committees. You know, the current issues they're talking about. You know, there are some big ones there. You know, if I were to turn to the comp plan as in its current form, there's no hook to put a hat on some of these issues. And if that's the case now, before we've even approved it, if we don't somehow close that gap, I don't feel like that we're being responsible as a committee. I certainly don't feel I'm being responsible, you know, even in a secondary role as a liaison.
I guess it's unfortunate that it's been this long. That's Jean Marie.
Yeah, no, I do back Dawn up on that. I do think there needs to be just a bit more that does address, you know, working waterfront, because it is an important part of our town, and I would hate to see over the years that we lose that, because that's an important part of the character, it's an important part of our economy. So yeah, just putting something in there. And Dawn, you just took over, right? Was it this year or last year on coastal harbors?
Yeah, I've been on since you know, spring of 2020, but the committees haven't met because of COVID.
That's right.
So I mean, I hate to really blame everything on COVID, but
no,
you know, we're really just at fully staffed and functioning committees now. And guess what? You know, the issues that we left a year in
Right.
March a year ago. They're still here. So I don't.
Well, where I'm going with that is there was a turnover in liaison too. So if I would request that the committee, the Shellfish Committee and whatever Harbor Committee be allowed to put something forward. They're going to have to do it really fast though, Dawn. I don't know when they're meeting next. To maybe be
We're
included
meeting
in
again in a
something.
week.
If
We're meeting
that, but
again in a
again,
week.
you and I, we're not the bosses here. We got to put that in front of this committee. So
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my you asked for a content issue. I wanted to give an example. So that's enough said. And I don't mean to derail the process, or the timeline or anything of the sort.
Okay, I agree. Let's see what we can get out of them to fortify some language here. But Marvin?
I wanted to support what Don and Jean Marie at the end there was saying about adding the content they were describing. Anecdotally, I was on a nature walk a few days ago with neighbors, having nothing to do with this, hoping to enjoy my time away from the review of this. And lo and behold, a couple of the people right in front of me walking the path started talking about exactly this subject. And the comments, this is just, actually one of them was a developer in town and another is a new resident neighbor having moved from a big city and having had, sounded to me like a lot of experience in this area. And I'm going to share these comments. They're not, they're more of a critical nature, but I think that they fall into what Don and Jean Marie were just saying about the waterfront issue. The gentleman who's moved from the big city said, after I reviewed it very closely, it looks like a lot of comprehensive plans I've seen. And when I, at the end of their discussion, said, we're meeting this Friday, and I'd be very interested if you'd shoot me some emails with thoughts, the developer in town sort of leaned into me and said, Marvin, there's nothing really in the plan to comment on. And that's hypercritical, I understand it. But when you have the 35,000 foot view, I think we all have to face that you don't see very much detail, and everybody knows that. But thanks for letting me share that. It does not change any of my comments about the appreciation for all the work that's gone into this, and particularly by the committee members. And again, you have to thank the staff enormously. Excellent staff. Thank you.
Thanks, Marvin. Peter?
And Marvin, with all respect, I'll push back on that a little bit. And I think it gets back to what Alan mentioned a little bit earlier about this meaning to be read as a whole. The comprehensive plan tells a coherent narrative and pulls the point in time at which it was created in a very effective way that then leads into the implementation recommendations and the implementation plan at the end. That implementation plan, I think, has been appropriately left for future articulation and development by the appropriate other committees within the town, not just the long range planning committee, but also with the town council and the rest, and appropriately leaves those as items for both immediate but future articulation. And as a planning document, therefore, I think it actually does stand quite well, and it needs to be viewed in light of the intention of that implementation plan moving forward. So as Alan said, this is very comprehensive. If it were comprehensive or detailed at the level that you might see at a New York City or a Boston municipal planning document, this document would be 4,000 pages long. Developers like that because of the detail it offers, but citizens and a community that's looking to understand the next 10 to 15 years of on the ground comprehensive growth, I think would rather have this document. And I think this is actually more helpful in steering the work of the rest of the town governance process. And the the other thing I kind of observe on this as well, and it speaks to Don's point. I think Don is right. We've got a gap here on the beach community side and the marine resources side, but I don't think it's a huge gap. So I don't want to have the committee think that this is going to take a long time to put together, because part of it, the town is we're a diverse town. There are a lot of folks I know on the west side of the turnpike who really don't have that much engagement with the beach and beach community folks. There are a lot of folks who are interested in what's going to happen in Eight Corners and North Scarborough, who again are not thinking about Higgins Beach that often. In fact, it takes a while to get there. So I think if we add some bulk, we do need some bulk. I'm completely on board with that with Don. But I think if we keep it in light of the balance of discussion of all the needs of the town, I think we can pull it together quickly and do so in a way that would address the feeling of something being missing that Don's bringing to the table.
Okay, thanks. Alan, then Corey.
Just a question for Don. The comment that you last made was that the waterfront and the beaches were an example of items that you felt needed more information in the plan. Don't necessarily, I'm fine if we want to go down the road and we want to add a little meat on the bone for those areas, but my concern is, you said an example. And are you indicating that there are other areas as well that you feel have to be addressed before this gets in front of council? Because I don't want to necessarily be piecemealing this if we can avoid that. So if you clearly know there are other items that still need to be addressed, I, for one, would appreciate you bringing those up at this point so that they could be addressed if the committee feels it needs to be.
Great, thanks, thanks, Alan. Sorry for dropping off on the video there, but appreciate your comments. No, I think there's basically a single page that Jay had shared with me. That's as Jay had said, sort of like the core of the park for marine. I think we can make some, revisions to the wording to be more specific there. But at the outset, I think that when we talk about that the marsh is central to the town, we need to kind of add a reference. The marsh and our sea, our natural resources involving the sea shore, as well as our working aspects of those areas, need to also be included. I am concerned that if we omit them at the front end and the back end, that we're going to be, we're going to have a hard time balancing our commitment, the proper commitment to climate and preservation of land. So I feel that we still need to balance it somehow, with some slight wording on the front end. But throughout, I think that the more I've read about this, it did it's a gap at the outset at a high level, and it's a gap, when we get down to when we move from alpha to omega, it does get, it's that bracket. I'm not suggesting it's a lot of additional content, but basically, Alan, it's those two things if I had to boil it down.
All right, thanks.
All right. Well, my Greek is a little rusty, but thanks for that further explanation, Don. I think, part of my comment or question was similar to Alan's, but I guess I would say, to the extent that we're going to consider adding, kind of putting more meat on the bone here, so to speak, I'd be curious to hear specifically what that committee has in mind. I mean, it feels to me, and I'm not picking on them or certainly on you, Don, but at various points during this process, it has sometimes felt like there's sort of a little bit of a name check thing going on where it's, it occurred to me that as a parent of 3 teenagers that sometimes there's a little bit of a high school yearbook dynamic where it's like, well, this name only shows up X number of times and it's only on X number of pages. And there are different interests in town that all have very valid concerns and stakes in all this, but it sometimes feels like there's a little bit of a thing here where we feel like we need to mention certain things a certain amount of time and give them their due. And I fully agree that it's important to acknowledge the importance of the beaches and the working waterfront, both in terms of the economic implications as well as access and certainly the environmental facets of it. But I just want to try to make sure that we, both for purposes of time and process, but also just in terms of having a plan that really, having things in there that are in there for a reason, that we really understand exactly what it is that folks have in mind here, whether it's beaches, working waterfront, or any other facet of the town.
Well, I think, I hopefully answered that question that you just repeated when Alan asked his. On the fly here, I'm sorry that I don't have it, more coherently stated or language to offer. But I hope that we've said we're still editing it. We want to see this before it goes back to the council. I heard that earlier in the meeting, number one. And no, I did not do a word search. So, but it is more than just a word search here. Okay. So, to answer your question, and I don't view this as a yearbook, so no need for you to sign my photo.
Okay, Marie.
Sorry, I was muted. Dawn, this question is for Dawn through the chair. Dawn, I got the spring communications plan for the council last night, and I'm looking at it here on my bulletin board. And it looks like the workshop for the comp plan is May 26th. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's out there a ways. It's definitely not right around the corner. It's out. Yeah, it's out there a ways.
So there is a bit of time to do not major changes, but a bit of more spit and polish, or if you've got a couple gaps or to add. And that's why I'm saying I don't have an issue, and I agree that we may want to put a couple more things about the working waterfront, but we need to get that information in here ASAP from that particular committee. So I would suggest, and again, this isn't my committee, I'm the liaison to it, as is Dawn, that if we could give a charge to Dawn to get something back like in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Is that too soon for these guys?
We have a joint committee meeting on the 13th of April. This is unprecedented. We're experimenting a little bit with process, but there's a joint committee meeting of cold waters and shellfish. I'd be happy to work up something between now and then and share it with Jay and the committee to get that in front of the committee and have them, sign off on it. So I would envision a pretty quick turn here. I do not envision, me expecting those guys to go through the entire document and in any shape. I'm going to focus on the one page that Jay has highlighted, make some revisions to that. And then in terms of the high level references, I think that's an easy insertion, but that's a decision for the committee to balance our focus with the centrality of the marsh and our land preservation efforts with also public access utilization to our, marine resources, recreational and otherwise.
Okay.
Yeah, I just observed it, and Jay, maybe you could add your thoughts on this to address Corey's point. The section from page 62 to 72 addresses kind of non-neighborhood specific amenities that are enjoyed by the whole town. Each of those is about 4 or 5 paragraphs, usually has a picture accompanying it. Something like that in the tenor of that section would make sense to me to add. It would probably be 1 more page, but that I think does add the meat that we're looking for and that Don's really speaking to here. It describes the amenity of the sea, of the waterfront resources, of the beaches in a way that is universally used by potentially every member of the community, but isn't necessarily trapped in one locality. So, and again, the format there is very consistent. It would be easy to adapt the type of language in those sections to the waterfront. And that's just a suggestion that I'd make. And Jay, maybe we can give some thought to that.
Sure. I guess the one thing I would offer is I do think we have a section like that, but it's on page 131. It's titled Marine Resources, and it's 4 or 5 paragraphs that, and certainly this is, I think, what Don is referencing, that maybe just needs a little bit more hung on it, and the committee would like to see a little bit more. I will mention, Don, that just because you had mentioned sort of the unprecedented joint meeting, it's actually we had I think it was back in 2018, after the first draft came out, we had a joint meeting with those two committees to review the first draft. I'll dig those notes back out, but so it's great that they're able to come back together to sort of review what's now before the town as well.
Thanks, Jay.
So that's
And
good.
that would give me a starting point. I'd also, ask if there's anybody else who'd like to work with me on it, but I'd be happy to, take a cut at it and reference these things and get it in a page or two for you and the committee. But I would appreciate any input and any other edits. But, I really, I hesitate to bring it up, but I really don't want this to be a topic for discussion for us at council. I'd much rather do the thunder and lightning, in committee, and then have it be, smooth sailing by the time we get to the workshop, or, pretty far along by the May timing of that workshop.
Yeah, well, I would say, it seems that we're waiting on GP-COG comments. I would suggest in 2 weeks that if anybody has comments or suggestions, that they circulate them so that we can come together after that and make one last pass at this as a group effort to close it out. Marvin?
Quick question, I think, for the committee, and in particular for you, Don. In this area that you're describing, putting more meat on the bone, does it include, along with waterfront, commercial waterfront, beaches? Is it both of them, or is it more one or the? I know it's not more beaches, but are we talking about fleshing out more for the beaches and the commercial waterfront?
I think it's both. I think if we do one and not the other, it'll be a miss. But and I think if we touch on both of those, it will balance what we're saying in terms of our commitments to climate, to the environment, and also to land preservation, land trust.
So going back to what Alan was saying, I think it was you, Alan, about are there any other weeds out there, and let's talk about them now. Does that cover it, those two issues, beaches and waterfront?
Thanks, Marvin. For me, it does. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And Jay, just as a comment, I hear you on the page 131. I think, though, that it for emphasis and to address sort of the concerns, adding again just 4 or 5 paragraphs in that section 62 to 72, or pages 62 to 72, and adding a picture probably does make a difference. Given, again, we are a coastal community, so to only mention it on one page towards the end of the document probably is light, to Don's point.
Yeah, I think, what the sense I'm hearing, and correct me but just to sort of try to put my understanding of where we're at right now, that there is interest in hearing from the shellfish and the coastal committees, what their comments are, and certainly as much of the narrative that they can try to put together to help, sort of with the efficiency of the work. But I think once, and Don, if you're able to, it sounds like in the next couple of weeks, you're going to be meeting with the committee, try to put that together. Certainly, I think, filter that back through Karen and I, and then we can try to put something together that hangs it into the plan. And Peter will take a look at the areas you're talking about, and then bring that back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll try to get specific here. I'll try to get something back to you, Jay, that could be shared with the committee running up to the joint meeting on April 13th for the committees. So hopefully that would get, I'm not expecting the committees to do the raw material on this. I would expect I'd take the cue from what's been discussed on those 2 or 3 sections, pages 62 to 72, page 131, and also the higher level comments. And we'll come back and see what to you after you hear from the committees, and you decide what you want to do from this committee standpoint.
Okay. Karen?
I do just want to check in. When we did the last revision, we did edit that first vision statement to add the beaches and some of the other concerns in terms of making it more holistic for the environment. I just want to make sure that we're at least starting at the top. I thought the committee felt comfortable with the edit that was done, but I do want to check in with that to make sure, at least at the top level, we've got some of these issues done.
Yeah, and maybe they're in the detail, but I still haven't seen it in the broad statement.
Okay. I'm sorry, you did see it in the broad statement?
No, I have not seen it in the broad statement. I mean, I think that there were some other areas where we made references to it, but it's not that clear to me at the highest level, no.
The one thing I'd add here maybe is that, I do think this is the type of thing that does come out when you see the document as a whole for the first time in a while. So I don't want to, and I think that came through in Don's comments as well. This is a great document, but when you see something in its entirety, you start to see how relative weights have been placed on different things in different ways. So yeah, I don't view this is not a fundamental reopening of the box. This is just some tweaks to address what is revealed by seeing a product in its entirety.
There.
I agree with Peter's comment.
So is there anything still hanging out there that we're not addressing? Anybody have thoughts on a gap or information that's not well targeted?
I just want to say I do appreciate that Don is bringing these concerns to us, and appreciate his motivation to want to try to avoid having those types of conversations at the council level. It's consistent with what we sort of talked about before in terms of process. So better now than 2 months from now at council.
Thank you. My goal is looking for a unanimous recommendation coming out of committee, including the liaisons. I know we don't get a vote, but we want to make sure that this is paved, the route's paved, and it's going to be smooth by the time we get to workshop time and approval time in council. Thank you.
I agree.
So, Dave, it sounds like maybe we've sort of discussed the edits so far, and we're generally good there. And then we're hearing, that we're going to get some new information coming out of a couple of our committees around the marine resources. So we'll see what that looks like. And I've already referenced the fact that GP COG is looking at this thing. And so maybe it's sounding like we'll have one more bite at least, I won't just say one more, but at least one more sort of go at this. And that should be, again, I think the main thrust there at that point will probably be around the marine resources piece that we're talking about, where I think the work that GP COG is doing is really more, again, it's copy editing. I don't think we're going to see much in the way of policy, though they have been asked if they see any red flags, because they do help a number of communities with these, to flag those. So we'll see what comes out of their review, but so it seems like this committee has a little bit more time, and it was interesting. That was sort of, Jean Marie, it sounds like council's already starting to think about when a workshop might be on this, which is out to May. And I should reference, and I think I might have informed you all, but just so you all know, when we emailed this still working draft, and this is still a working draft of the document to you all, we also emailed it to the council. It is posted on the website, but I haven't circulated it far and wide yet, because I don't want, this is a working document, so it can get complicated for people. Obviously anyone who's interested should be following along and is encouraged to follow along, but I also don't want to sort of complicate or confuse the general public who really just wants to see, okay, what are we doing? So that's been sort of my thinking thus far. And so again, everything's posted to the web for those who are interested. But
I think to summarize what we heard this morning, that there are some loose ends to fill. And I guess I would suggest that we've got a 2-week period here while GPCOG is looking it over, that if anybody does notice holes or has some input in this final go round, that we try to capture them all at once, so we're not continually taking little bites at this apple, and address. I mean, I also want to get back to Don's comment about some of the bigger, maybe some contradictory language in the first, the beginning of this. Maybe we take the tactical statement out. I think the rest of the sentence works. But if there are little things like that we can massage, let's get them on the table so that we can wrap this up after the GPCOG comments come back. If everybody, chimes in and agrees.
I think that's
That
smart,
ma-
Dave. I agree.
That makes sense to me. Jay, clarification on, is the version of the plan that's currently available on the town's website this version or the prior version?
so everything's on the town's website. Everything's on the town's website. When you go to the comprehensive plan page, what's on there, what sort of pops up is the draft that was circulated publicly. Then when you drill down or just scroll down, you'll see the committee's folders for each of our meetings in January and February, where we went over those sort of hacked up PDFs that Karen and I worked on and the committee discussed and voted on. And so you can follow the bouncing ball, so to speak. And then the final folder is this working draft. And I didn't sort of elevate that to the top yet because this working draft, because this committee hasn't said, yes, you did it. So it's all there. But what is the public draft is still what was publicly circulated back in September, October, and announced. So again, before we sort of do another sort of, hey public, here it is again, and then in 2 weeks we have, we make some changes and send it out again. I just feel like we'll start to lose people in trying to get them to read this thing over and over, where it's hard to, where we can't do the strike through and underline thing. That's why I put those PDFs up, is for those, bless their heart, those folks that are willing to spend the time and energy to figure out, okay, what were those changes? It's there for them. But I think the majority of people, has been my experience over all my years doing this work, is the majority of people just want to see what is that final product, what is going forward.
So if you go to the reason this came up, some of the land trust board members are following this pretty carefully, and Andrew Amaki sent around what I think was the version that you see when you go on the town website, and at least the top level version. And those people who are paying attention got back to him and said, gee, it doesn't look like there were any changes from the last version we looked at. And so I piped up and said, well, I think that the plan that you're getting on the town's website is not the latest version, at least that's under review by the Long Range Planning Committee. And so, hold on to your hat for a while. But I didn't realize that you can get to the current version on the town's website. So I'm on the website now. Where do I find, I know I looked at it the other day.
Yeah, I'm just trying to pull it up so I can walk you through. Yeah, so correct. When you go to the comprehensive plan page, the the draft that was the public draft, the public draft that was sent around the fall is what's at the top of the page. As you scroll down under the Long Range Planning Committee Working Draft Amendments, there's a section called Long Range. And actually, hey, why don't I do, because Zoom is good at sharing screen, why don't I do that? Hang on one second.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the Long Range Planning Committee section.
All
For
right.
example, there's today's
Are-
agenda.
Are folks seeing the comprehensive plan page?
Yeah,
All right. So this is still I'll call it the prior public draft. I'm not really sure what the right terminology would be, but the draft that was largely circulated in the fall going into the public forums and council workshop upon which we received comments.
okay.
Then right here under Long Range Planning Committee Working Drafts, we've been
okay.
posting as we go, all those, as I said, all those crazy PDFs
Yep.
that we've been sharing with the committee and then the committee worked through have been posted. So people can follow what we've done with each meeting. And then
Good.
what I've done, because at each meeting, the committee talked about them and asked staff to do a little bit more work, put them all together here under the revised working edits. And then under April 5th is the comp plan that we all have, that
All
were
right.
the working draft. So I get it's a little bit, yeah, if others have a better way to do this, I'm all for it. But
No, that's very helpful. I just want to, and for all I know, Andrew may be in on this meeting on the public side. But if not, I'll lead him into this so that I can point the board members to the latest working draft is what I
Yeah.
refer.
Jay, I think the level of transparency you've got here is phenomenal.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
just
great.
a comment in that minutes section where here is the latest working draft that the committee is working on, just to give a little bit of a pointer. But
Yep.
because it is still a working draft, I don't think it's appropriate to replace the one that was used for public comment back in the fall.
Exactly. And exactly.
Yep. Yeah, we can just relabel that latest working draft.
Yeah,
April 5th,
exactly, yeah.
latest working draft. It makes it more clear. Yep, good. Yep.
All right, good. That I really appreciate the clarification on that.
Dave, if I could just have one final comment. I did try to take a look at the document for what I think of as balance, and read it more with a balanced view of the document as a whole. And in reading it with that lens, it struck me that Don's comment is apropos. It's a little bit light on the beach and working waterfront side versus other highlighted areas. But to me, it was a borderline issue. I think Don was more sensitive to it, and I totally hear him on that one. But it was more of a sensitivity point. For the rest of it, though, I thought we were very balanced, given how diverse and how many issues are really being faced by the town over the next 10 to 15 years, most of which are happening in the more rural or more development-oriented districts, and where our comprehensive plan are going to have to address those with much more strength than, say, Higgins Beach, which is largely, fully filled in, or Pine Point, which has obviously environmental issues to deal with, but again, has limited opportunities for additional development. So I thought the balance overall was really well struck. Again, I had some nits on language between it, but I know CPCOG is going to take care of that. But I do want to say, I think both staff and I think the committee's work and the process to date has built a fairly balanced document for a town that is not like Bath, or it's not like, a Gunkwit, which has basically very limited sets of questions they need to deal with. We've got a very complex, very large town that is growing differentially right now. And the comprehensive plan, I think, is doing a very admirable job of addressing the very large set of issues at the right level for a planning document. So again, well done. Dave, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. So any closing comments on the comp plan review points at this point from other members? Or
I'm
any-
good, and I'm gonna have to bail. I've got another call that I'm late to get into. So, great work. We'll continue to plow ahead. Have a good weekend.
Very good. Thanks, Rick.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
imagine we'll open for public comment here, but could I ask, I'm a little confused as to what next steps or what the process is from
Yeah.
here or governance is from here. Could maybe Jay or Don help me out on that?
Sure. So this committee's charge is to make a recommendation to council on the comprehensive plan. So ultimately, it'll be up to this committee to vote out of committee a comprehensive plan for the council to then consider. When the council receives it, they certainly will put in whatever process they feel appropriate. But statutorily, there is a requirement for a public hearing and a public hearing with the planning board. And then, they have to vote. Council will, maybe that's where Jean Marie and or Don can speak to what additional layers they may add on to the minimum statutory requirements are. But for the charge of this committee, ultimately it will be to, vote on a recommendation to council. And then ultimately, this is a document that is adopted by council through their process.
can I just ask, I think that one of the council goals is to adopt this by June. Is that correct?
June 30th.
Yeah, I have dates, on that. Jean Marie, you have them there too with the chevron
Yeah.
there, the spring communication plan.
That's what I'm writing into my calendar right now, as a matter of fact. Yeah, we've got May 26th for the comp plan workshop, June 2nd, comp plan first reading, June 16th, the comp plan public hearing, and then June 30th, second reading and adoption.
And just for my benefit, is it expected that though the public hearing that will not have comments or edits, so it would move through from there? Or and again,
Well, yeah, well, this is why we do what we do now. Because it's like a final public hearing on it, and people can give comments. At second reading, amendments can be made to things, but we would rather get everything up front so that it's coming out of council unanimously and that the public has already had their input. And Dawn, you can weigh in at any minute with this. I mean, if there was a real groundswell of we hate this comp plan and then obviously we'd have to go back to the drawing board, but God forbid. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, we've had real difficulty with, with trying to amend things live. So my hope would be there would be very few things that would change, once we get past the workshop. I think there, could be a chance for some things we had not anticipated, but, we're doing the heavy lifting now. I not expect for us to go through in one meeting, that we were just going to review and approve, good to go at this meeting. I thought we'd have, one or two turns at this. They say it's all about managing expectations, but yeah, we're over a month and a half away, almost 2 months, away from the workshop. Then, the end of June is 3 months. So there's time, but I hope we get it, pretty well bolted down and airtight, well by that time. Thank you.
Arvin?
I wasn't anticipating the meeting going in this direction, and something just popped into my mind in relationship to Don's talking about the beaches and the waterfront. I just wanted to take this second to add it in there. Again, not attempting to throw monkey wrenches into this process at all. I live across the street from the Scarborough Beach State Park, and I spend many of my days thinking that the development in town and the growth that Peter, you were talking about in other areas, not at the beach areas, they're pretty filled in. However, the way I think about it is with the growth and the housing and the development that's taking place in Scarborough, all of those people, very understandably and I support it, will be out of their minds if they don't want to access the beach. And therefore, I'm thinking there needs to be some approach to the growth in population as it relates to beach access. And Don, as you're working in the next couple of weeks, next 10 days or so, I'm available if beach access is something I realize from the 35,000 foot view might be touched upon in a few words. I'm available to help. I've given a lot of thought to that. So at any rate, just wanted to say that. Thank you very much.
Jay, I saw your hand then. Jean Marie?
Yeah, so I think mine was on a prior point that I've lost at this moment since we've sort of jumped to another topic. So I'll let it lie for right now.
Jean Marie?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, Marvin, that, yeah, we could perhaps put a statement in that, about making sure we maintain public access to the waterfront and beaches. But a lot of the details on that actually come through ordinance committee. I'm chair of ordinance, and I know we've got something before us in April regarding some concerns with parking on Black Point Road that we'll be talking about. But that's sort of that nitty gritty stuff comes through the process of ordinance. Again, this plan, the comprehensive plan, is your big picture, way up there, big picture. And then it trickles down through. I think it was Peter was talking about how it, it's the big picture, big umbrella, but then the various committees and the councils and whatever deal with the details.
Completely set forth. Jean Marie, and yeah. I appreciate you responding to me in that kind of detail. Only if it's appropriate as the town is growing.
Right.
I'm thinking of thousands more people moving to Scarborough. How do you maintain their access and control?
Right.
That's
right.
Thank you.
And there's specific language on this going back to the old plan. It's something to the effect of, preserve and maintain access to, to marine resources, something like that. But there's language like that we can tie back to. That's a fairly easy fix, Marvin, but appreciate your offer of help. Thanks.
One thing, this was another thing I thought of a while ago and just popped back to my mind. I did hear one thing earlier that I do think we need to address. And Don, you had mentioned it about the be bold piece and how you thought we were going to delete that. My take on it and the edits that we reviewed were we talked about those sort of 9 principles, and we early on tried to figure out how do we sort of weave those throughout the plan. And so we came up with sort of using those bubbles sort of throughout the plan to sort of highlight what was happening. What I recall was we were actually going to just delete the word be and not actually remove the whole principle of bold. And so that's what I had in my notes, and I believe is what the committee discussed. So I think it's just worth a quick touch back in. If staff missed that and the rest of the committee agrees that the concept was to delete the whole bold principle, then that would be a miss that we had.
Hey, Jay, I looked at the Be Bold stuff, and I saw that was in the schematic that was part of the process. So, I mean, and I was also looking at the Plan-A-Palooza details that describe the process. I mean, I think it's probably, if we try to take that out, it basically does sort of it does not describe what was done. So, I mean, I can live with bold, but I do know we'll be hearing about that probably from other people, but it's not a drop dead issue for me. But I think if we try to pull it out, we may end up pulling out more than we really had intended. So, but I'm open to persuasion on it. The Irish, when they say someone is bold, when they say a child is bold, that means bad. That means a kid needs to go sit in the corner. So that could be just my reaction to that word.
God, my grandmother used to say that to me.
The child is bold.
That I was bold.
Oh, Jean Marie, she was accurate, but in any event, I think we talked about exactly that point, Jay, that we were going to get rid of the be bold, but keep the bold. So I think that's what I recall from the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, should we get to public comment?
I see we have one person here and their hand is up if you're ready.
Yep.
Okay, Ms. Bristol, I'm bringing you right in. Here we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. And good morning, everybody. And thank you again for all the work that's been done on the plan and specifically addressing the concerns about Higgins Beach. And well, Jay answered one question. I know now where I can find the latest version online. I had another question that I wasn't clear on with the conservation and growth map. The way the key reads, it's on page 100. If I'm looking at the old version, so I don't know if it's changed because I haven't looked at the new version. But so basically, are we saying that every area in town except conservation and open space and rural residential are growth areas?
Just bear with me while I flip to this, but in essence, yes.
Okay.
And those type of designations of growth and limited growth, or forgive my terminology here, yeah, the limited growth areas really are coming from what the state is looking for. But I don't recall, and let me flip. We did do some language. I must be on the revised version based on this conversation to really identify that though an area is identified as growth, and you'll see the language when you get back in, and hopefully it answers the question as well, doesn't mean that means where we're going to, that all those growth areas are the same. They fall under an umbrella, and sometimes growth is about what a lot of us typically think about when we hear the word growth. That means more people, more development, more activity. Other times, the terminology growth is really about investment in infrastructure. A good example might be with Higgins Beach, the sidewalks that were put in. I know that was many years ago, but that's the type of investment in infrastructure you would put in a growth area that you might not put into a limited growth area. So it's not always just about, and so there's some language, Allison, that you should see in the revised draft, probably on just the preceding page right before somewhere in the 99 or 100, that really aims to answer that question, because that was a good point you had previously raised. That, as we read it, said, yeah, we don't really identify that growth is a broad umbrella and growth has means different things, but we're really trying to ping off what the state is expecting when they see a plan.
Right.
So happy to sort of, once you get a chance to take a look at that revised language, have a conversation with you as well. And of course, always during public comment, of course.
Okay, thank you. And just a couple of more questions about if I can be bold, if I can be the public bold. Jay was kind enough to share with me the revised definition, if you will, of villages. And so, and I really appreciate, you're trying to make the distinction that not all villages are the same. But one thing that pops to mind is previously, the description said that they would allow a mix of uses providing services to locals living in these areas. And I think that's kind of the definition of a village, is that the services that are in the village are to serve the locals. And that was one point that I brought up. I don't know if others brought up as to why Higgins may not be a village, because the services here really don't service the locals. They service the tourists that are here. So instead of addressing that, the language was changed to provide a limited mix of uses, providing a range of services, which almost is of more concern, because, you know, what would those services be? As in, you know, commercialization, quite frankly. So I'm just calling that out as kind of a new concern. And I think that the I appreciate that, you know, what a comprehensive plan is a coherent narrative. But on the flip side of it, you know, the concern here is that, you know, this is a residential neighborhood, first and foremost. And, you know, the public is more than welcome to enjoy it. And, you know, but we're really not an amenity per se to the town of Scarborough. We're a residential neighborhood. And I think it's important that, you know, I think the measure down the road, because we hear, you know, you hear this all the time in council meetings, and I say all of this in the spirit of civil discourse. It's not meant to be a criticism at all. That if something, you know, that may be a little bit controversial is moving forward, you hear often, well, it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. So I think that, you know, where maybe we don't want to be prescriptive here, I think that, you know, whatever the verbiage is, should be able to pass that test, not just to protect, you know, say beach areas or access to beach areas or amenities in beach areas to the general public or to tourists, but for the residential neighborhood that's here. And also needs to be, you know, preserved as being that quaint, you know, kind of New England, Maine area community. So again, I thank everybody very much for their time and consideration, and look forward to the continued conversation and looking at, you know, the next versions.
Thank you. Hey, Marvin. You're on mute. Marvin, you're on mute.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Yep.
To Allison's comment, I'd want to hear something absolutely surgical, Allison, that I feel what you're saying. I intellectually understand the issue you've raised, but I don't know what language or in what way very specifically the committee can address it, period. That's so in these 2 weeks we have, or something like that, I would suggest bringing that forward, and then we can vote up or down on it.
Okay, yep, I would, yep, send something to Jay that we could discuss if you feel there's some edits necessary. And that was the only member of the public, correct?
Correct. Yep.
All right. Next meeting.
So our typical meeting is the first Friday of each month. But I think
Which is today, isn't it, Jay?
what's that? Yes,
It is
today
today.
we finally met on our regular meeting day. So yeah, for those new members, Peter and Marvin, don't worry, we don't usually meet 3 times a month as we did in January and February. I know actually we had a little nice break there in March. I guess what I would say is certainly tag your calendars for the first Friday in May. However, I could foresee us having a meeting in late April once we get the document back from GPCOG, once we see some language coming out of any committees who might have additional thoughts. And then, so I could see probably a 2 to 3 week time frame for it. I would actually probably say more a 3 week time frame in all honesty when I start thinking about things. So, but do tag the first Friday of May, and then keep your last 2 Fridays of April open for now. How's that sound?
Bear in mind, there's a school vacation week, I think the 3rd week probably of April. So it doesn't impact me, but it might impact others.
And it looks as though you're saying, Jay, the 23rd is a very likely meeting date, right?
23rd or 30th. Again, I would hate to sort of get things on the, get stuff back from GPCOG or on the 20th and then say, okay, guys, we're going to meet in 3 days. So I want to be sure we give you at least a week to review before we get together. So frankly, as I look at this, I'm probably actually 30th seems more likely to me when I build in that extra week of review time. So maybe we do that. Want to pencil in the 30th? Does that make sense to folks? Okay, we'll do that.
Yep.
Okay, good. Motion to adjourn?
I
I'll move to
move.
adjourn.
All right, second. All in favor?
Thank you, Dave.
Very good. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.